Hello and welcome to another fun-filled edition of Adam's Music Box, where today it's a kind of bittersweet fun because we're remembering John Entwistle because it was on this day in 2002 that his funeral was held. I remember where I was when I heard when I heard he had died. I was driving and they were playing a lot of Who songs on the radio, and I thought, oh, that's great. They're playing Who songs. What's not to love? And then the DJ came on and said that John Entwistle was found dead of a drug overdose in his hotel room in Las Vegas just before a concert was about to begin. And if you have to go, that's not a bad way to go when you're in a band the likes of The Who. They had obviously lost their original drummer, Keith Moon, in 78. They had a few more decades with three of the original four, but when John left, it really left a tremendous hole in the band for so many reasons, because John was really the musician's musician of that band. Keith was a wild man who was a better drummer than people realize, because what he might have lacked in technical dexterity, he excelled in poetic showmanship. And while Pete Townsend wasn't a kind of Jeff Beck or Eddie Van Halen style technician, he really knew how to play his music because he was the writer of that band. Roger Daltrey, great singer, classic frontman. But John Entwistle was something that was so special, and he was always my favorite member of The Who because he was a virtuoso in a band not necessarily known for virtuosity. The Who are known for excitement, they're known for great songwriting, they're known for fun. But John Entwistle was a bona fide virtuoso of the bass, and he could play a mean French horn as well. Now, John was always quite mysterious. When he came out with his first solo album in the early 70s called Smash Your Head Against the Wall, you need to listen to it because every track is amazing. Pete Townsend remarked that I really never understood John until that solo album came out. And they had already been playing together for nearly 10 years by then, gigging almost every night at points. But it was only through that solo album that he really got to know his bandmate. Uh, so many other great solo albums by the Ox. There was Rigor Mortis Sets In, all of the so much dark, sarcastic humor in all of the albums. Too Late the Hero was a great song and a great album from which the song comes. And it looks like after many years of being severely out of print, John Entwistle's solo catalog has now mostly reappeared on the major streaming services. So definitely check that out. If you like rock music, you've probably heard The Who a lot, though never hurts to hear more. But check out John Entwistle's solo stuff. It will not disappoint at all. It's very interesting, very unique, and it shows off the fact that he was a very good songwriter in addition to being a virtuosic bass player. Another thing that I'd recommend is it's floating around there on YouTube somewhere, which is the isolated bass track to a live performance of several Who songs. I think they've got it for Barbara O'Reilly, they've got it for Eminence Front, they've got it for Won't Get Fooled Again, I believe. Just anything where you Google or YouTube rather, isolated bass John Entwistle, and you can really hear that even though sometimes the bass wasn't necessarily buried in the mix, but it could have always been louder when it's John Entwistle, if you ask me. So listen to his isolated bass stems, the isolated bass from the multi-tracks of both live and studio recordings that have found their way out there. And your mouth will hang open. You'll go, damn, one of the very finest basses of all time. And to see him in a context outside of The Who, because he did do some really interesting stuff outside of the band beyond his solo work, check out a live performance from the very tail end of the 80s by a supergroup called The Best. Now, it's possibly the worst name to give your band. It was basically the idea of some Japanese promoters who just wanted great musicians of international renown to get on stage together. But because they were so good, it really, really worked. It was, of course, John Entwistle on bass, Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer on the keyboards, Joe Walsh, from a great solo career of his own and also the James Gang and the Eagles. He was on guitar and vocals as well, mainly guitar though, and slide guitar in particular. You have the great Jeff Skunk Baxter, who has played with loads of people, but perhaps best known for being in the Doobie Brothers and before that in Steely Dan when they were a band rather than a studio idea. And of course, on the drums, the great Simon Phillips, who has played with everyone. And you can see these great musicians just having a hell of a good time playing music from the catalogs associated with all of the bands that these various virtuosi have been in at one time or another. It shows how much fun he had on stage. In The Who, people sometimes forgot to notice having fun because there was Roger Daltrey with the long hair and the swinging microphone. There was Pete Townsend with the dramatic moves in his guitar. There was Keith Moon blowing stuff up. And so John looked rather restrained in comparison, but he had a good time on stage. He loved playing, and he died kind of doing what he loved, waiting for the next gig, playing on the road. And I will say also, one of the final huge gigs that The Who did in late 2001 was at the Concert for New York City, which took place very shortly after 9/11, and they stole the show. I don't recall who they were billing as the headliner, but The Who stole the show, and it was one of the final performances with John Entwistle in the band, captured on camera. And what a beautiful, poignant swan song that was. Magical. So rest in peace, the Ox, John Entwistle. Some call him Thunderfingers. We'll see you next time. Like and subscribe if you can. Take care.